Okay, so good afternoon everyone and welcome to Lambeth's Send and Inclusion webinar event. My name is Denise Chikwendu and I am the Programme Manager for Education and Learning Transformation. Thank you for joining us. So this afternoon we have colleagues from across Lambeth's partnership to share information about what support for our children, young people and families in regards to SEND. As an overview this afternoon, we will be visiting the local offer and hear about the Inclusive Engagement Forum for children and young people with SEND, education, health and commissioning, and social care for children and adults. There will be opportunities to ask questions, so please use the chat facility during this event. Without any further delay, I will now hand over to my colleague, Dan Oakley. Dan, over to you.
Thank you very much, Denise. I'm Dan Oakley. I am currently the lead on the Send Local offer for Lambeth, although hopefully handing over to a permanent local offer coordinator post holder early in the new year. The redesigned Send Local offer. Over the last year, we've been redesigning, revamping and relaunching the Send Local offer, which is the place to find all the information that you need about support services for children and young people with special educational needs and disabilities across Lambeth. We did a couple of screen captures here from the landing page of the local offer. On the left-hand side, you can see the banner, the introduction, and importantly, the introductory film. We've tried to make the local offer as much about people talking as it is about reading. On the right-hand side, you'll see the 6 paths that people get to choose from. Crucially, the parent and carer, the young person, and the professional path. And what I'm going to do now is hand over to parents, carers, young people and professionals by showing you a film which lets them tell you why they think the local offer is a good thing. Back to you, Denise.
Thank you, Dan.
Having a child who has autism can be quite challenging at times.
Part of what I have had to do as his parent is to find resources to be able to support him so that we can have a support package that really follows him and suits him.
I just needed good information to help.
I go on the local offer website. They have lots of information there, different services that you can use. The one that I used recently was the one about starting school.
So it's important to have a website with resources surrounding SEND for everyone, because it's one place that you can go to for help and advice and support.
Yeah, I think it's a really good idea because it can help kids with special needs, kids with ADHD, autism and anger issues and stuff like that. It can really help them out.
The website is very accessible because it has different routes that you can go down. So, for example, as a professional, I could go onto the professionals part of the website and look up information that would be relevant to me, and it might have a section that is more relevant to young people and a section that's more relevant to parents and carers.
I think parents should use the local offer because everything is on it, from nursery, from school to college. Everything you need to know is on the local offer.
It's practical information as well. So for me as a professional, if I need information around what can young people do around money, there's stuff around budgeting in there.
Child support, funding, where people can get extra help, ongoing support as well.
If I need to look about information about what can we do for our young people in terms of going out and stuff, there's lots of information on there for that, and practical solutions as to what we can do. So I think it's really important for me as a professional, but also for parents and for young people, it's a website that is essentially for all people.
You can look down the list, think about what it is that is missing or that you need, click on a button, and then it brings up a whole range of options and information for you.
For me, if I'm struggling with something and I don't have the right information, I am saying that this is the website that you need to go to, because it will cover all the elements that you need. If you're a youth worker, if you're a nurse, if you're working with young people, if you're working with early adulthood, in terms of SEND, this is where you need to go. It has all that you need.
I find it very reassuring to have the information there, to know that both our local authority is on it and cares about our kids, but also there are charities and NGOs and a whole range of organisations who are there to give information, guidance, support and fun.
Thanks, Denise. You'll be glad to hear that usually it doesn't look quite as glitchy as that, the film. If you go onto the site, you can see it at the moment, and it will play in a normal kind of speed. And we will be using that film to promote the local offer as part of a major launch that's going on. There are also shorter versions of that film introducing each of the three parents, young people, professionals pathways. And there will be even shorter versions going out on social media. So yeah, in summary, local offer puts all the information in one place for young people, children and young people with SEND. Information on, and you can see the list there, I won't bother reading it to you. So any questions, please drop them in the chat and I will respond to them, or you can get in touch with me. I haven't got my email up there actually, but I'll drop that in the chat as well. Thank you.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Dan. And now I'll hand over to Jerome Martello.
Thanks, Denise. Good evening, everybody. So I'm Jerome Martello and lead for SEND participation and engagement. So today I want to talk to you, give you a quick overview of Lambeth's Inclusive Engagement Forum. So what is the Inclusive Engagement Forum? Well, it's about empowerment. It's about giving young people with special educational needs and/or disabilities the opportunity to make meaningful and lasting contribution where it counts. And this includes having an opportunity to socialize and make friends with like-minded individuals. Now, we really do believe that it's this contribution that will help to make Lambeth and the services relevant to our SEND young people more inclusive and accessible to all. So why is SEND important? Well, it's a statutory duty, meaning that every local council and their partners must offer suitable support to children and young people and their families. Now, SEND can come in all different kinds, different ranges. It's expressed in different ways, and it can include ASD or autism, attention deficit disorder or ADHD, dyslexia, cerebral palsy, and more. How complex or severe each need is can differ from person to person. Now, why join the Inclusive Engagement Forum? Well, of course, it is a statutory duty for all local authorities to ensure children and young people considered as having special educational needs and/or disabilities are involved in the decision-making process and the design of services that are relevant to them. So this means that listening to young people and giving them an opportunity to be heard is compulsory. So guys, look, if you really want to make a difference, you want to make friends or be a part of something really special, then definitely you need to come and join us. And this is just one of my favorite sayings, guys. Some of my colleagues are already familiar with it. The people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones that do. And we really do believe we cannot do it without our young people. So if you're interested in joining, drop me an email, jmartello@lambeth.gov.uk. Thank you, Denise.
That's great. Thank you very much, Jerome. Really appreciate that. And Adam, over to you.
Thanks. Okay, I'm Adam Arnold. For those who don't know me, the SEN lead at Lambeth. I'm just going to give a talk to a few brief slides about some of the important areas in education that the new local offer and the new strategies picks up on. Okay, thanks. So just to give a bit of background, bit of context, we do in Lambeth have a slightly high percentage of pupils who have identified as having SEND above national and our neighbours in London as well. For example, in July 2021, 13.3% of our pupils were identified as having SEND compared to our neighbours at 13% and the national average 12.1%. So we're just above that average. The top three categories of needs are speech language communication needs, autistic spectrum conditions, and social, emotional and mental health. And that again is in line with the national picture. Thanks. So what we know about our children in Lambeth with SEN are that there's more black children with special educational needs or disabilities compared to white British children. There's more boys than girls that have special educational needs, and we really want to use this strategy and the action plan to try and work with our partners to get better information about the makeup of our children with SEN, taking into their backgrounds and their culture into account. So that's really is a priority to do that work. Thanks. So we know that after the inspectors say we've got an impressive profile of schools, with about 90% of our schools being good or better, and almost half being graded as outstanding. And we're also very confident, and we can see from the data that educational outcomes for SEND children are strong across all key stages compared to national and local statistics. So, for example, at primary age, more children with SEND reach expected standards than the national average. And by secondary age, attainment for children with EHCPs is within the top 20% of the boroughs in England and the councils in England, and the top 25% local authorities for children with SEND support. There are now more young people who are in education, employment and training, and that's been a year-on-year increase in the last 4 or 5 years for 16 and 17-year-olds. And the latest data shows that we've got 94% of young people with educational healthcare plans in employment, training or education between the ages of 16 and 18, and that's well above the national average. Most children young people with SEND attend mainstream schools, early years, mainstream settings or college settings. However, obviously some children with more complex needs do benefit from our specialist provision. Thanks, Denise. What we've done, we've invested heavily in increasing the range and number of specialist settings so children with more complex needs can attend school locally and in their community, which is vital. We've got 6 special schools in the borough which provide education for a range of needs, including more severe, profound, multiple learning difficulties, social communication needs, and autistic spectrum conditions. We've also invested in resource bases, which is the extra support, extra resource units, used to be called, but we call them resource bases, that are in and are attached to our mainstream schools. At the moment, we've got 8 primary resource bases and 4 secondary resource bases, and we're hoping that there'll be more opening in the coming years to support the growing need. Thanks, Denise. So, educational healthcare plan. For those who don't know, an educational healthcare plan is what's given to a child or young person whose needs cannot be met with the normal support given at school. So when a child with an EHC plan, we've got more children, slightly more higher average percentage than average percentage of children with EHC plans than England and London. London's got a high percentage than most anyway, which you can kind of expect. But we can see that over the last 4 or 5 years, the number of children with educational healthcare plans has risen every year. There's a number of reasons for this, but a few reasons are that the Children and Families Act changed in 2015, which moved from covering children to 19 years of age to moving to young adults, so that, up to 25 years of age. So that's an impact on numbers. We are confident that our services identify children with SEN earlier, and that early identification is happening, which will then lead to perhaps an EHC plan being given earlier. We know that schools now apply for EHC plans because it attracts extra funding, which we know our schools are struggling in that area. So the EHC plan can get them extra funding, which helps them meet the needs of those children. And also we're seeing that more children with issues that qualify for an EHC plan. We have seen an increase in children with autistic spectrum conditions and an increase in children with more social, emotional, mental health conditions and more complex needs that do require EHC plans. Thanks, Denise. So what we've been told by our parents and when we had the inspection January 2020 is that while our plans are increasingly clearly worded and there's a good focus on children and young people at the centre of our plans, with a particular focus developing social skills as well as educational outcomes, and we're told by our parents that we'll go for the assessment for the first time and get a new EHC plan, that they're happy with the quality of the EHC plan. We're not at the moment. We still know there's room for improvement in terms of reviewing plans over a longer period of time. There's too many. A child might have a plan in year 5, and it needs to be as up to date as it was then in year 11, year 12, and onwards. So we want to be confident that our plans remain relevant to the current needs of young people and have a strong preparation for adulthood thread as the child gets older. It's a real priority for us to continue to work on our educational healthcare hub, which is our online portal for where we do new assessments, but we're working with parents and children and other providers to make sure that the HCP plan stays relevant, stays up to date, is reviewed regularly, and that can be held centrally on that portal, so parents can access that at any time. So that's a real priority for us at the moment. Thanks, Denise. So, as I said, we want to make sure that from the year 9 onwards, it's just important that the educational healthcare plans take into account of those transitional next steps into employment or into independency. And that's what we want our plans to be really reflecting. That should be from day 1, but from year 9, there should be a heavy emphasis on that, what we call the preparation for adulthood thread. Thanks. So really, if I don't know if there's any questions for me in the chat or anyone wants to ask any questions about that. No. Okay, well, in that case, I'll happily move on. Thank you, Denise.
Thank you, Adam. Really appreciate that. Thank you very much. And next we have Dr. Claire Wicks, and she'll be talking about health and commissioning. Claire, over to you.
Hello, my name is Dr. Claire Wicks. I'm one of the community paediatricians at the Mary Sheridan Centre in Lambeth, which supports the needs of children and young people in the area. So I'm going to look at what our services offer in terms of universal. That's what services that everyone can access without a referral. What services we offer between the ages of 0 to 18, and this is a referral-based service, and how we work. Evelina London Community works with the Special Educational Needs Department in Lambeth. So universal services, these are services for all. We have health visiting, help to support and promote the health and development and safety and well-being of children from birth to 5 years, ensuring that children get the best start in life. We also have universal resources, which anyone can access through the Evelina London website. These include Chatter Time, which is an online, our weekly online session for parents and their children, where they would benefit from support around their speech and language. There's also speech and language therapy resources which can be accessed, and 2 occupational therapy resource packs, one for preschool children and one for school-aged children. And there's little pictures there of what the resource pack front pages look like. So in terms of our referral-based services, for the under 5s, community paediatricians who see children where there's concerns around their developmental progress, or children where there's complex health and developmental needs. We work closely with health visitors, the therapists, early years special educational needs team and nurseries. We have a variety of therapies, including speech and language therapy, who support children who find it difficult to communicate, physiotherapy, where there are concerns around children's motor skills, occupational therapy, who support children with their everyday skills, which specifically at this age would be things like feeding, play, dressing, and community dietitians who support children with disabilities with a healthy diet. For the school age children from 5 to 15 years old, the paediatricians assess children when there are concerns around their communication, social interaction, behaviour, movement, and acquisition of everyday skills. We look specifically at conditions such as autism, ADHD up to the primary school age. The older children are assessed by CAMS, and developmental coordination disorder. We also support children and young people with complex health and developmental needs. Again, work closely with therapists, education, and children's social care. In terms of the therapy services for these school-age children, speech and language therapy for communication is commissioned by education, but they still provide support around eating and drinking skills. Physiotherapy teams support children with physical disabilities, access school, the community, sports and leisure activities, and promote physical well-being. The occupational therapy team support children with independence and everyday skills, participation and accessing play and leisure activities. And again, our community dietitian continues to support children with a healthy diet. For college age young people, community paediatricians mainly there to make assessments where there's a possible diagnosis of autism, and also to support those young people with complex health and developmental needs and prepare them for transition to adult services. We again work closely with therapy, education, and children's social care. In terms of the therapy services, speech and language is for eating and drinking. Again, communication is commissioned by education. Physiotherapy support young people with physical disabilities access college, the community, sport and leisure activities. Occupational therapy support young people with independent skills, participation and accessing the community, and again, a dietitian around a healthy diet. Here at the Evelina London, we work closely with Lambeth SCN to ensure children and young people can access education and their health and developmental needs are well recognised and supported. We provide information and advice around children and young people's special educational needs. We work with Lambeth SCN to ensure educational healthcare plans reflect children and young people's health and developmental needs. And we also help to ensure the local offer provides children and families with information about how to access local health services. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm very happy to answer them. If not, I will put my email in the chat.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Claire, for your time this afternoon. If there are no questions, I will then hand over to our colleagues from Social Care, Children's and Adults. Brenda and Luke, over to you.
Thanks, Denise. I hope you can hear me okay. My connection isn't the greatest today, so I hope I'm coming across loud and clear. Thank you. So I'm going to start talking about what is early help. So early help means taking action to support a child, a young person and their family early in the life of the difficulty. So ideally, good early help really puts support in place as soon as those challenges and those problems start to emerge and start to show themselves. It can be required at any stage in a child or family or young person's life. So it could be early help we do pre-birth, that could be our children's centres, our health visiting services, our Better Start workers, right through into early adulthood as well. And it applies to any difficulty or need that a family cannot meet on their own. Thank you, Denise. In Lambeth, we've been trying to do some work to move away thresholds, because often the feedback we get from families is that they're being told their needs or their children's needs are not complex enough to meet the criteria for this service or that service. So as a Lambeth Safeguarding Children's Partnership, we've been looking to create a document that helps to describe levels of need. And this is particularly important when understanding what children and families can benefit from early help, and what we can do within the community to provide early help. So you can see within that the definition of community early help. And I'm going to hand over now to my colleague Luke Norbury, who's going to talk us through a little bit about what community early help is, and also what our Tier 3 Lambeth Council targeted early help is, and specialist early help. Thank you, Luke.
Thanks, Brenda. Hi, everyone. My name is Luke Norbury, and I'm one of the locality managers in our early help service. So when we think of early help, what we're talking about is, in essence, family support. And there's two kind of aspects to that. One is what we call community early help, and that's everybody that delivers services to children, young people and families. And the key thing with community early help is this is where a child or young person or a parent and carer may have some additional needs, but those additional needs can be met by the services that exist in the community. And we're very fortunate in Lambeth that we really do have a kind of a diverse range of excellent community services. And this is where we ask our community partners to connect children, young people and families to those community services. So in a way, sometimes we refer to it as earliest help. And then the next slide, please, Denise. And then the internal early help service located in children's social care is what we refer to as a kind of a more targeted and specialist offer. And this is specifically for children and young people where there may be a range of unmet needs. And what those children and young people would benefit from is a family assessment. And that family assessment will identify how those unmet needs can be met by kind of the services that exist. And the key thing will be is that an early help practitioner would be allocated to support the family in relation to meeting those needs. And that will be a combination of the practitioner building a relationship with the children as well as the parents and carers, undertaking direct work with them themselves, but also being the vehicle to support the family to meet those needs. And we use something called a team around the family meeting, which is a vehicle to bring together the family alongside the involved multi-agency partners to plan for those needs and review them to see, are we making a positive difference, or do things need to be tweaked slightly? And then the final is our colleagues in our statutory social work team. So the early help service works closely alongside those, so we're able to have those conversations if families and ourselves feel that that needs to be escalated. Thank you, Denise. So when we think of the Lambeth Community Early Help offer, there are four kind of key aspects to the offer. One of them is we really are outward facing in terms of the rooted in the partnerships and the community. And what that enables us to do is to establish and maintain relationships with those partners who are delivering services day in, day out to children and families. And some of our role is really about being able to provide information, advice and guidance to our community partners so that they can further support the needs of the families that they're working with. And what that will often look like is a community partner giving us a call and having a conversation about a child or young person they're working with and just wanting to kind of test out some ideas. The other aspect is the targeted specialist early help offer that I touched upon. And then the third aspect is a training offer. So one of the things that we have done is we have an early help assessment, which all partners are able to use. And that's really a tool in the toolbox for partners to be able to kind of sit down and have a conversation with families that they're working with to think about what's working well, and the strengths that exist, what are the worries that the family might have, and then what ideas are there about what would need to change and how would that change. And as an early help service, what we do is we deliver training to really support and build upon the kind of skills and capacity of the partnership in their work with early help. And then finally is something called partnership meetings. So when the onset of the pandemic happened, we very quickly recognised that there was a real need to be able to ensure that the partners delivering services to children and families were able to meet on a regular basis. Because as we've seen with the kind of the chopping and changing of the tiers, the ways in which services have been delivered to families have had to change. So what we have is and you'll see in a second the locality model, but we have partnership meetings in each of the localities throughout the borough. They're chaired by locality managers, so myself and my colleague Dion, and we bring together representatives from the entirety of the partners delivering services in that locality. And the key things are that all partners have an opportunity to be able to update each other about the offer. And we're also able to respond to kind of emerging thematic needs. So as an example, when we think about the December period, our partnership meetings have a focus on emergency food as well as domestic abuse. Next slide, please, Denise. And this is an overview of the community early help locality teams. So we have 4 locality teams in the borough, and they are centred around the areas of the borough where there's the highest prevalence of needs. So we've really been able to utilise the kind of breadth and depth of data that we have available and tailor the teams around where the highest levels of needs are, so that we're really kind of it's almost like a team around the locality, so to speak. And what you'll see on the screen now are those 4 locality teams and the wards that they cover, and then the managers applied to that. And finally, so for any referrals into the internal early help service, so the key thing is that families and parents and carers have provided consent. So we work with and for families with their permission and consent to do so. Parents and carers can also self-refer, so our colleagues in our integrated referral hub, we have a main telephone number as well as an email address, and that is something that parents and carers can make contact with themselves, as well as that's the route that our partners would refer into. And the route for doing that is what is called our multi-agency referral form, which is an online form which is completed. And then what happens is when a referral is received into children's social care, our colleagues in the integrated referral hub will review that information, and they will make a decision informed by the information that they have available to them, as well as speaking with families and partners on occasions where that's necessary. And that will all help to inform a decision about the right type and level of support that a family requires. Next slide. I think that might be the...
I think that's it, Luke. Thank you very much. And thank you to Brenda also for your time this afternoon. Are there any questions at all? If not, then we will move on to transition. So Richard Sparks, I'm handing over to you.
Thanks, Denise. So hi everyone, good to be here. So I'm Assistant Director for Adult Social Care within Lambeth Council, so have responsibilities to support some of the transition processes from children's and SEND pathways into adult social care. So if we go on to the next slide, please. So just to give a broad overview about why children may need to transition and what's in place to support children or young people transitioning into adulthood. So there are legal duties and responsibilities on a local authority, which are laid out under the Care Act, which is a national piece of legislation. And there's also the Mental Capacity Act, which is in place for anyone who's over 16 in terms of how decisions can be made for individuals if they lack capacity to make that decision for themselves. And there's some general principles that underlie that around decision making being in the person's best interests, being the least restrictive, and also making sure that all relevant people that are involved in a person's life are involved in that decision making process. Transitions is often or can be seen as a bit of a complex area, and is also a period of time that I think can be slightly anxiety provoking for young people and for families who are going through that change and have questions around what provision might look like in terms of care and support as a young person moves into adulthood. And I think it's important to note that transition assessments can apply across the different pathways that exist. So they're not just for children who may be already known to social care. They can also apply to anyone that has an appearance of need in relation to social care and health needs. And the plan really is to develop and start transition planning as early as possible. Best practice guidance says that that should start from 14. And that those plans should be reviewed on a yearly basis as a minimum, so that actually if things change, people can put those plans in place before people turn 18. So let's move on to the next slide. So there's some overarching principles that we just wanted to outline, and some of this has been informing the Preparing for Adulthood strategy and the SEND strategy that we've recently released. Obviously, at the heart of it is wanting to look at co-producing policies and strategies and pathways. We've got very active carers and service user representative groups, which is very a real positive within Lambeth, and we've had a number of different forums over the years that's looked at transition pathways and plans, and we've had a lot of feedback around those processes, and we obviously in Lambeth are very committed to wanting to co-produce and look at developing and piloting changes and having feedback and ongoing feedback around where things are working well, or where as a partnership we might want to do things slightly differently. And obviously at the core of it is wanting to make sure that we achieve the best outcomes for our young people within the borough, and making sure that we've got effective processes to measure that, but also to receive feedback around that and to involve young people in the development of transition processes. And then the next slide. So, and that sits very much with the overarching principles that the Care Act outlines. So there's some core principles and philosophy that the Care Act is encouraging everyone in terms of within the partnership to work towards. So clearly empowerment and putting people at the centre of decision making and being able to make decisions for themselves. And thinking about the principles of well-being, so thinking about holistic assessments and transition planning, and understanding what's important from a personalisation approach, so what outcomes and what support is relevant for each individual, and that will look different for each individual that is going through a transition process. There's also some principles around early prevention, and as we've heard from Luke, the general idea of actually intervening and offering services at an earlier point often has much better outcomes, and looking to avert things moving to more complex or crisis care planning is what we want to avoid. And there's a lot of emphasis on proportionality, so making sure that assessments and processes for accessing support is proportional to someone's situation and their level of need. And recognising that to get the best outcomes and the best offer locally, this has to be done through a partnership and through a partnership with the community. And I think in Lambeth, we're very fortunate to have a really vibrant community services offers and a really engaged community which is really helping us to shape and develop things. And then, of course, there is the issue of accountability. So in terms of practice and professional practice, but also being transparent around accountability to service users and parents around the offers, and again, receiving feedback around how we're doing as a council. So moving on, Denise. So this is just a nice slide, really, I guess, to show some of the core outcomes that we want to be achieving for our young people as they're moving into adulthood. Obviously, there's much more involved in this, but some of the core things that the local offer is looking to achieve is obviously to support people through where able into employment and meaningful activities in adulthood. We're very supportive and want to look at how we support people to live independently within the community, and wherever possible to avoid people having to move out of their local communities. And we recognise that community inclusion and people's outcomes are best achieved when actually they can remain within their family and caring environments where they've grown up, and thinking about some of the barriers maybe that we want to overcome to make sure that our communities are truly inclusive. And obviously our health partners have a big contribution and offer a lot of support around ensuring that health inequalities are addressed and that the medical and health treatment and monitoring is also accessible and available for young people who are preparing for adulthood. So I think the next slide, we just wanted to give a very quick overview on what a transition assessment might entail. So at its core, it's really looking to ensure that there's continuity and planning from children's services into adulthood. There is a national eligibility criteria that all local authorities follow, which is laid out in the Care Act. And it's looking at what care and support needs individuals and their families might need going forward, and also should be a source of information and advice. So it's not just always about eligibility, it's about actually meeting with a social worker or a practitioner who can support and give information and advice, and also link into more generic and holistic services that might be available that doesn't necessarily require local authority support or funding. There's a real emphasis, as we mentioned before, around assessments being person-centred, and they should be completed at a time that's most appropriate for that young person and family. So there's not necessarily a set time, although best practice would suggest that those assessment processes start before someone becomes 18. And that obviously the educational, health and care planning processes are a big part of making sure that information is considered in any transition assessment that's taking place, and thinking about individuals' aspirations and their progress to achieving those outcomes. And these would be completed collaboratively. So again, there's a wide range of professionals that would be asked to contribute and support the planning and the transition assessment process. So should we move on to the last slide? I think it is. And then just looking at some of the outcomes, I guess, broadly that we're looking to achieve as a partnership. So we're very committed on wanting to develop employment and educational opportunities for our young people with SEND needs. We want to also think about some of the life skills that are needed to be developed, and working with colleges and schools to do that. Educating and supporting young people to be knowing how to manage money, looking at some of the life skills, and increasing self-esteem and confidence. And as we mentioned earlier, a strong emphasis on looking at reducing barriers to accessing health and health inequalities that may exist locally. If there are any further questions or anything people would like to ask, then please do get in contact with myself, and I'd be happy to take those questions.
That is great. Thank you very much, Richard, for your time this afternoon. So we are nearing a close for this event, but there is still an opportunity to ask any final questions and or to give any final comments. Would anyone like to share any thoughts? No? No final questions or comments? Well, in that case, I would like to thank everyone for your time and your questions and comments. I would also like to thank all my colleagues from across Lambeth Partnership for giving up their time this afternoon to share more information about the support that they offer in their respective services. So I will now unshare my screen. Hello everyone, thank you so much once again for your time. Really appreciate it. If there are no final questions and no final comments, then I would like to really thank you very much for all your contributions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks, Denise.
Bye.
Thanks all.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.